Hi, my name is Melody, and I'm okay. In 2018, I was diagnosed with severe depression, and it changed everything. Even though I'm the same woman that I was before, I see the world differently. My dream in life is to be a public speaker, and this podcast is a way that I'm getting my voice out in the world. So on here, we're going to talk about mental health and the state of our world and just trying to find ourselves along the way. Your support means the world to me because it's literally making my dreams come true. So I hope that this is a place of healing, and I am so honored to journey with you. Hello. This is an episode that I've needed to do, but I have put it off because it's really hard to talk about. And when I have talked about it, I have been received poorly. So my hesitation is grounded in experience. But nevertheless, leaving the church and Christianity has been such a huge part of my journey. It's impossible for me to be authentic in this podcast and not talk about it. And a lot of my good friends are going through the same thing. So I know it's relevant. I just don't want to talk about it because I have been treated like trash because of it. I've also been treated well, but the really negative experiences always stand out more than the positive ones. So I'm going to talk about how I graduated from Bible college as an atheist. Saying why I started questioning my beliefs, why I could never go back to the same institution I grew up in, and where I'm going and I'm headed, which is just so exciting. I grew up in a very Christian environment. And I realize how deeply embedded it was in everything now that I've left, and I see my family who's still really engaged with going to church and Bible study and being part of all these extracurricular groups, and it's their whole social lives. Yes. Oh, guys, this is so hard to talk about. In high school, after being discouraged from wanting to be an artist because it didn't make money, then I decided I wanted to be a missionary in Africa to save all the starving children and tell them about Jesus. And that I wanted to be a pastor. And this was controversial because I'm a woman. And my own mother told me that I was reading the Bible for my own selfish means and not as it actually said, because I wanted to be a pastor and I was a woman. So even that had some controversy. My parents still attend a church that doesn't let women speak from the pulpit, which is so great. So I went off to university and to be a pastor. And I am very thankful that university had me question all sorts of different facets of Christianity, ones that I had never heard of. It taught me an enormous amount about Christianity's formation and the Bible and different denominations. This whole time that I was in university, I got severely burnt out by working at church. I was working at church the whole 4 years, and 2 times individually I got very burnt out and traumatized. Trigger warning that once I would be shaking for up to 6 hours because I had so much anxiety from the pressure that was put on me. I couldn't sleep anymore because my heart was beating so fast in my ear that when I put it on the pillow, I couldn't get to sleep. I had some very serious suicidally contemplative, very serious plans to end my life. And I thought, I can either drive myself to the hospital or I can drive myself to the office and quit. So I decided to quit and got counseling, and this happened twice. And the second time it happened, I left furious that nothing had changed and that this had been done to a young woman twice. And not just me, but a couple other staff, one of whom is my best friend and is still, years later, still has chronic fatigue. So it traumatized a lot of us. And a church that I was attending for a couple years, and whose lead pastor, he was to me the best example of Jesus and what I wanted my life to look like, just lived radical justice, acts of justice, and was incredible. And he ended up getting arrested for trying to have sex with a minor. And so I start asking, why the hell do we do church in the first place when it's me? It just almost took my life, and these other leaders that I'm looking up to are committing despicable acts. And I saw some pretty ugly conversations around that lunch table with the pastoral staff. I saw some pretty ugly things behind the scenes. I also saw really, really beautiful things. I stayed there for that long because the majority of it was beautiful. But there is this very sinister shadow side to it that when I got swallowed up and spat out, I can't unsee what I have seen. And I can't go back. So as I start questioning, why do we do church the way we do it? And then comes is the person we're worshiping even there? What, this machine that we use to worship God, is God even there? Is God real? Was Jesus real? And in the midst of these big questions, and this had also come up just naturally from my degree teaching me to question every single part of what I believed, so that I wasn't just believing it because my parents did. And And I'm, again, really grateful for that in my degree, that they challenged me to be, if you're going to believe this, have a reason for it and be well informed and look at the flaws in your arguments. And so people are asking all sorts of questions, but I found my peers weren't asking, but is all of this even legit? Like, is God even real? And maybe people were, but closeted. And then I started asking, and people didn't really have answers. And then in about a month's time, my sister had 2 friends that were hit by a drunk driver, and one died and one survived. And they were both in the hospital in absolutely critical condition. It's unbelievable that the one girl made it. But I had heard that there was more than 1,000 people praying for these young women. And people say, oh, God miraculously healed the one girl. But I'm going, well, and what the fuck and God just let the other girl die? And that same time, I support a daycare center down in Mexico for single moms, so that they can put their kids into this really healthy day program, and while they go work, so that they don't have to leave their kids home alone. And these women have been through the just worst tragedies, and I don't even know the half of it. But one of the moms, who, like many, had lost so much, family, home, running away from abuse. She had a little baby, and this baby was really, really sick. And so then they email like all the supporters, please pray that this baby makes it through, because this mother has lost everything. And then for her to also lose a child, perhaps another child, is just the worst. And then her child did die. And I go, what kind of fucking God lets all these privileged white people go to church and have their Starbucks coffee and talk about all their wonderful new things that they're buying and how blessed they are, and that the people who are in the most need, God can't even fucking save them. And it doesn't matter if there's 600 or 1,000 people praying for a young woman's life or a baby, that God can't even fucking save them. And the good things that are happening are because human beings are helping human beings, like this daycare center. It's doing such good work, but it's humans. Like, we are the ones helping. And then when, someone is really sick and there's kind of nothing that we can do, so we turn to God to work God's miracles, and God fails over and over and over. Again, I can't unsee that. I can't turn a blind eye. And when I brought that up to other Christians, they would just look at me with wide eyes and go, I don't know. God is a mystery. Suffering happens. God didn't promise that there wouldn't be any suffering. God is doing a fucking terrible job at taking care of us then. The colonizers are flourishing from their fucking exploitation of the poor and milking their privilege. And we attribute that to God providing for us. And then the people that need the help the most, I try and help But there's things that I just can't control and can't help, and God doesn't seem to give a damn. So I go, is God not all powerful? Like God just can't do it? Or maybe God comes and goes. Like it's kind of like chance. Like maybe God will show up and sometimes not. Maybe God just isn't good. Like that this whole thing was made by this powerful deity, but this deity isn't necessarily good. And after running through all those options, none of them are kind of satisfactory. And so I said, maybe there just is no God. And when I was asking these questions, I was received well. Oh, those are great questions, Why is there suffering? Like everybody's asking those and you'll figure it out. It'll make you stronger. But then when I told those same people my conclusion that, yeah, I asked and I wrestled, and my answer is that there's no God, then I was less well received. And the people that matter most to me, my family, they rejected me horribly. And one of them said the ugliest things I've ever heard. And so the shadow side of Christianity comes out again, where when you don't believe what we believe, there's this like vile underbelly, like putrid insults and hatred and disgust towards us people who look at the flaws and go, this doesn't work. So why I can't go back, a lot of it comes from that. But this good God suffering world paradox, Christians are terrible at answering. Fortunately, Buddhism has been very helpful in explaining suffering, why it happens, and what we can do about it. And since leaving the church, I have had so much more freedom to explore other religions because I can just learn from what they have to offer instead of trying to convert everybody to see the way I see things. I think one of the ideas that was most harmful to me as a child and now is this idea of hell. Growing up as a little kid in public school, and most of my friends weren't Christians, thinking I am like a 6-year-old, like grade 1, and looking around at my peers and going, if you guys don't accept Jesus, you're all going to burn in hell forever. Like these are just kids that should be on the playground, and I am thinking that my peers are going to be tortured for all eternity because they don't think the same thing that I do. Furthermore, there's this, now not all Christians believe this, but I grew up in a denomination that believed in something called original sin, that when you're born, you are utterly sinful and terrible, and that is who you are. And so what you deserve is to burn in agony forever. But praise the Lord that Jesus came and paid for your sins, and the only reason that you get to go to heaven is not because you're good, but because, Jesus died for you. So I think all human beings have some kind of identity issue. And to instill in little children that at your core, your baseline is that you're disgusting and sinful and evil. And for you to think that you're good is arrogant and prideful. And it might take me my lifetime to undo that idea that I totally disagree that the core of who I am, that my baseline is that I am good. And shit happens and I do so much fucking shit, but it's not who I am. And the core of my person is not evil and wretched. And I can't imagine holding my baby child and thinking, yep, from the moment you left me, you're utterly evil. Are you kidding me? I don't have children, but I can imagine you look at your child and have more love for that child than anything else. And to you, they are perfect. And that this religious institution undoes that and tells you that you're evil, I hope you can hear how crazy that is and how wrong it is to tell people that the core of who you are is bad. Another thing I can't stand is this whole Jesus died for you thing. That it's redemptive violence that since you're so terrible, we had to kill this guy that's apparently perfect to pay for you. That the only way your shit, the only way it can be made right is by murdering somebody else. Who came up with that? It's a very ancient, tribalistic, like sacrifice-oriented culture. And I do love the idea of forgiveness and forgiving yourself for what you've done, forgiving other people for what they've done. But this like added element of, but you can't just forgive. You got to kill somebody. Like somebody has to pay. Like blood has to be shed. And I am not behind killing someone else on behalf of the shit you've done. Like, I think the wrongs that we do, there should be natural consequences for them. Broken relationships, the justice system, whatever has to be made right. But that is on you and your community to make your wrongs right. And relying on this horrible capital punishment that happened 2,000 years ago by the Roman Empire, executing a Jewish man. Sorry, that doesn't cut it for me as a free pass. This idea that you think if you think these impossible things, then you get saved. That if you think that this guy who was dead for 3 days came back to life, and if you think that there's, this invisible force that's controlling everything, that is one person, but also three people, but also everywhere, but also not everything, because then that's Hinduism. God. So you need to believe these impossible things. And if you do, then you're going to go to heaven when you die. It's so crazy. It has nothing to do with, hey, actually be a good person, live out like justice and ethics, but you need to, all it is thinking these impossible. I can't never go back to a religion that, and it sounds kind of culty, that you need to believe these ludicrous, crazy things, and then you're accepted. And that could just be, I could talk for hours about how your Christian sex ethics are rooted in shame about the body and fear of other people having sex. It's not talked about, and when sex is talked about, it's awkward and shameful, fearful, controlling. It doesn't celebrate sex. It doesn't teach you how to have good sex. It's so rule-oriented and so focused on a woman's virginity and that she has to stay pure till marriage. And I just see people's lives have been destroyed by these shameful sex narratives. And the only redemption that people have had is breaking out of what church has taught them. So I can't go back to an institution that has such a horrible view of sexuality that is so harmful to people, doesn't help them celebrate who they are, doesn't help them enjoy sex. Now, with all of that said, I know there's Christians that don't stand behind any of this, that they do look to Buddhism to answer the question of suffering. They don't believe in hell. Original sin is bullshit. They don't support redemptive violence. They have a more liberated sex ethic. And cool. I'm happy for you. I am so traumatized by Christianity and this club, and you need to think this way, and if you don't, you're a goat and you're kicked out. I can't. The language is so traumatizing and so hurtful, exclusionary, that my heart rate goes up instantly. That's why it's been so difficult to record this podcast, because I have to use Christian language as I'm talking about why I left. And I just can't engage with it. Let's talk about my community now. I know in Bible college, the professors were so concerned that young people were leaving church, and they would tell us the reasons why church is important. And hey, y'all, I'm going to describe my community now, and I know it supersedes what church could ever do. My community now is more vulnerable with each other than church ever was. We talk about absolutely everything, especially sex. We are totally free to talk about it. We talk about what we're struggling with. We talk about our relationships with the taboo things like porn and drugs and alcohol, polyamory, just all the hot topics that people are so ashamed to talk about. We are comfortable and free, and it is an environment of total non-judgment. My community now has a wide variety of races and cultures, whereas my churches were so white and middle class and so segregated by age. Either the church was made up of only young people or only old people, or maybe you got lucky and had a diverse age group in your church, but still then the young adults would complain endlessly that we just want to get together with the young adults, and the youth would want to get together with like it was still segregated by age. Now I work with people like who are decades older than me, and I still interact with people that are a lot younger than me. So that diversity is way broader now that I've left church, actually. Like I said before, sexuality is celebrated. It's not laden with shame. My job, I spend every weeknight with women who are struggling with homelessness, getting out of the sex trade, overcoming drug addiction, or coming out of prison for the first time. So these are people who are incredible, but society has totally pushed them to the margins and judges them as lazy, like taking advantage of taxpayers' money. They're totally rejected, and they have more trauma. They've endured more abuse than anybody else that I know. So when I was in church, we would talk about how Jesus spent his time with prostitutes, people who are sick, convicted people, murderers. And I was told that like that's who Jesus surrounded himself with. So if you're going to be a follower of Jesus, you need to surround yourself with the same kind of people. Now that I've left church, I have so much more fucking opportunity to actually do that. And my community now looks more like, quote unquote, the people that Jesus hung out with than all of my time that I was in church for my entire life. I am now spending, this past month, I have spent more time. Wow, that's crazy to me. I have spent more time with the marginalized than my entire church, like, career, time, season. It's crazy. So this is my community now. I honestly think I am a better person now than I ever was before. And yet, I have become a, quote, deeply disturbing person who is also a great, quote, disappointment. And I have, quote, lost my salvation. So, again, this is why I can't go back. Because my life looks more like what the Christians should look like. Like, it looks far more like what theirs should. And yet, these are the kinds of things that are said about me because I don't think the same things. Because I can't believe that there's a good, loving God out there. So, moving forward, I have been in counseling for about a year and have barely started to touch on my church trauma. And I hope that one day I can look at church and Christians and not want to spit and not want to tear my hair out. I hope I can give them grace, look at the situation with some more nuance. It would also be nice if, Christians gave me a little, some examples of why I should give you grace, because for months, almost every day, my bad stereotypes of Christians were affirmed. Like, I would see it over and over and over. Christians just like fulfilling all their negative stereotypes. Like, guys, do better. Sorry. But I want to work towards giving them more grace and seeing them in a better light. But for now, what I can see is my trauma and how they royally fucked up my life. And that's okay. But I'm trying to move towards a place of more grace. I am glad, though, that I will never tell the next generation that they are sinful and bound for hell. that the core of their identity needs like saving. I have always had a really loud conscience, and I've called it many things over the years, like a moral compass, the Holy Spirit, my gut, and I don't really know what to call it now, but I believe wisdom is me and not some outside deity that is directing this evil body. So, no, I don't think there's a God out there, and I don't think that Jesus died for my sins, and I don't think I'm going to hell for that. But I do believe in following this wise and loving voice that's in my head that has been with me my whole life. And even now I can close my eyes and think of the best thing to do in a situation, and most of the time I come up with something pretty good. And sometimes that voice sounds like me, and sometimes it doesn't. And a lot of people in my life would call that voice God, and that's fine. I don't. Because it has been so incredible for me to say that that good voice is actually me, and that is my identity. It has been so healing for my own self-esteem to say, actually, you have wisdom. And that the good things about me isn't some external thing being given to me, but I might actually just have some good things to give to the world. And even now it seems so crazy to say that, because it was indoctrinated and drilled into me that that is arrogant. For you to say that you are good and you have things to offer, that's arrogant because you're evil. So that's how I see spirituality, if you will, now. That I think there's still goodness, but I think it comes from inside. And I want to end with one thing that I think is the most important, is that growing up, the very worst way my life could have turned out was not being a Christian. So I am the manifestation of my biggest nightmares as a child. But now that I'm on the other side, that I'm not a Christian, I want to say initially it was scary, but now it's not scary at all. Letting go of hell and letting go of that fear of death is huge. Saying that I am just good. And I look at my life, and if there is an afterlife, which I am skeptical about, there is no way that I can see myself going somewhere bad. And it is so liberating to not have to fear that anymore, and not have to fear this God watching over me, and hope that He hears my prayers. My parents have communicated their disappointment with how I've turned out, and some of my listeners may think I've backslidden, and I think that's an indication of your prejudices towards people who are different from you, and not how bad I have turned out, because I am more proud of who I am today than who I ever was before. Like I said, I think I am a better person now than I ever was when I was in church, because this melody is more loving and just and is making the world a better place than the Christian melody ever was. The Christian melody was still good, but she was haunted by hell and haunted by suffering. And I have such a long ways to go. But I'm really, really glad I'm here. and that I'm free from church. And I look forward to still when I can let go of that part of my past. Because when I interact with my past, it is so hurtful. I hate seeing people from high school or church because they have these assumptions of me that I am that same person. And yeah, the environment sans church is great. But I would like to look back and not have to fear and run away. So hopefully this is the last time I'm recording this podcast, because I'm very tired of saying this story. But it has shaped me so much that I had to share it with you. Thank you for listening. I hope, I don't even know, that you got to know me better. And I will see you next week. Bye.